Hey guys, EJ here, and I'm going to be continuing my Depeche Mode series today. And when I actually sat down just recently to really pinpoint what it is about the overall sound and atmosphere, not the writing, none of that, one of the major things that sticks out to me that makes them really unique is their vocals. Between Dave Gahan's powerful frontman vocals to Martin's more soft, angelic vocals in the background and in the lead in some parts. I just wrote down some songs that kind of mark their vocal change throughout their career and I'm kind of making this to address a major criticism I see. More so with Dave than Martin. I see people say that his voice is so different that it takes away from the music. And I get what they're saying because it is different. That's just a fact. But I really don't think it takes away from the music because, quite frankly, a lot of what he's doing now isn't that different from what he was doing, 30 years ago. It's just he puts the emphasis on certain parts of his voice more than others. And, live in a live show, I can see how that could be problematic for some people. He does tend to go more for the nasally side, the more aggressive side of his voice more than the soft side lately. But in the studio, he still uses his voice perfectly, in my opinion. But Dave has gone through some major voice transformations. The first two albums, Speak and Spell and A Broken Frame, are definitely an interesting time for him as a vocalist. He didn't really let go yet. He was still holding back a lot, still whispering, I guess you could say, a lot more. And that shines really bright on Leave in Silence. Now, I really like that song. I think it's a song that definitely did kind of a prelude to their darker material down the line. And you could definitely hear it in his voice. But there's a lot of power that's being restrained. And that's the best way to describe those first few albums of theirs when it comes down to Dave vocally. And it's not bad. It's still strong. But there's definitely something missing. And that element is his full power, which really ever since then he's kept. And the next phase I have is kind of a developing phase. This is sort of on Construction Time Again and Some Great Reward. And this is really shines bright on Everything Counts and Stories of Old. Two songs that I think are some of his best earlier vocal performances, but once again, there's a bit of restraint on his voice, but it fits these instrumentals a bit more, considering the instrumentals are very industrial, very kind of all over the place, very aggressive, that it sort of is a good contrast. However, you start to see him use his baritone side much more here on Everything Counts during the verses, which is a completely descending pattern of notes, or however you want to say it, and it's like, the handshake says the contract, and then it goes, there's no, the Korea in Korea. You know what I'm saying? It's not the perfect impersonation, but you're getting the point that I'm saying here. He uses his low end much more, and this would be a common theme. Then after this era, you get to what a lot of people think is his best era, and I could definitely see why. It's definitely the most well-known era, vocally, for him. This is the dark baritone style that he was going with on Black Celebration, Music for the Masses, Violator. Songs like Stripped, there's an aggression to his voice, because he's finally breaking out of that shell, while keeping that baritone tone. And on Music for the Masses, the song Sacred is a great example of that. I love his very deep, passionate vocals. And on Halo, it shows him restrain a bit, but also be able to let go. And that's an ability that he picked up on further down the line, which I quite enjoy. But now this is where people start to get a little kind of weird. Songs of Faith and Devotion, there's already a lot of changes going on in his voice, and that could be anywhere between him naturally aging to the fact that he was a substance abuser, and there was a lot, and that could affect your voice. And this is the beginning of the era that we see now. Now, a lot of people try to deny this and act like he still sounds like he did in the 80s here, but he's a lot more raspy here. Songs like I Feel You are really raw sounding. It's not as clean. And then songs like Condemnation is some of his most powerful, but also very raw, very raspy, kind of gravelly sounding vocals. And even this would kind of go into Ultra. When he would try to do softer songs, he would still have that kind of scratchiness. But I like that. I think that, but that shows that his voice has changed. And he knows how to use his voice and still make it work. A lot of vocalists, when their voice starts to change, they try so hard to imitate how they used to sing that they end up making it worse. Dave adapts. And then we get to the more recent era. Some of the highlights for me are Broken from Delta Machine, a good, deep, aged baritone. Cover Me, solid performance, and Nothing's Impossible. Very haunting tone to his voice here. But what I'm trying to say is that his voice has shifted. And in a live setting, he does sing a bit more nasally, a bit more aggressive, not as soft as he used to. And a lot of people criticize that, and I could see why on a song like Black Celebration. But for a lot of the newer songs, it adds an extra edge to it, and I don't have too much of an issue with it. And it actually goes well with Martin's aging voice. Martin, once again, he was very, like I said, he has a very angelic voice, a very soft voice. And he's also a tenor, not a baritone. The very early songs, Any Second Now, is definitely much like Dave, him holding back, and he would definitely start to really expand on Somebody and A Question of Lust, the things he said. Those are all songs where you definitely get a good glimpse of his voice up front as a lead vocalist. And nowadays, his voice is has a bit more of a vibrato to it. It seems like there's a bit of a vibrato he can't control. But nonetheless, his voice has remained consistent. Both Dave and Martin still have strong voices to this day. I've seen them live twice on their most recent tour. I didn't find any complaints with his vocals. So, yeah. Now, but I think the thing that really makes Depeche Mode stand up is that they have this baritone and then they have a tenor, and when they're together, they're a powerhouse. Obviously, the big song Enjoy the Silence features them both on the chorus with some of the best harmonies I've ever heard. The song Little Soul from Sounds of the Universe definitely shows both of their voices at a more adult, mature, aged, section. And they flow together nicely. They complement each other perfectly. The harmonies on that thing are beautiful. I always glossed over that song until more recently when the vocals hit me. There's even a live version of Waiting for the Night from around, I think, 2009 or 2010, where Dave does use the more raspy, aggressive side of his voice, but it still fits with Martin's angelic side, and that says something. And perhaps their best duet is Here Is the House. I love that thing. Black Celebration, excellent album. But needless to say, I'm getting a little too sidetracked by going into each and every song. Their voices complement each other. And Dave's haunting baritone vocals fit Martin's really in-depth, really deep lyrics as well. It really makes Depeche Mode stand out against many of the other artists of the 80s, of the 90s, and now. And yes, they sound different, as anybody would, but they still sound good, and I really love their style. I mean, their voices go together perfectly. There couldn't have been a better combination. That's about it for now in this series. See you next time.